Again.
Hello and welcome to the F1 Wheel Nuts podcast. We are the first US based podcast bringing you Formula One commentary, not so expert commentary to your homes and to your phones. We're all super excited to be doing this. We're uh, very big Formula One fans. I know we all have our team biases, and that's what we love because we're constantly talking Formula One. We spend a lot of time doing this. We're just about 20 minutes before the Chinese Grand Prix, and we just want to do a quick pre race show to preview what we feel would be what we're expecting out of this race. Um, so Robert, great. What are you expecting to see coming out of this Chinese Grand Prix?
Well, I want to see a really exciting race. I know the Ferraris are on the front row lockout, so I want to see what the Mercedes has. Want to see what battle they're gonna put up against the Ferrari guys. I know Red Bull is also in the mix. I think they're on the third row, so let's see what the Red Bull guys has. Max and Ricardo, let's see what they bring. Let's see what they bring to the table. So I'm hoping for a really exciting race, and let's see what happens.
Nick, I know you're a big Mercedes fan, big Lewis fan. He really hasn't been on top of the car for some reason, either because of temperature issues or grip issues. How do you think? What do you think his mindset is going into this? I know you can't get into his mind, but as far as a racer, where do you think he's looking at this from?
I think he's gonna just put his head down and go for it. I mean, like he always does. He's one of those drivers that, you know, if something is bothering him, he'll let you know. Some people say he cries a lot, but I'm not with that. I just think he's one of the top drivers like everyone else, like and they've always done that. You know, Vettel cries a lot too, if you want to say it like that. And Mark's told me Schumacher used to cry a lot. Yeah, I mean, look at the shirt Mark's wearing right now. That's one of Vettel's crying statements. But no, I think he'll do pretty good. I saw that in reading before the podcast that the temperature in China has went up compared to yesterday's qualifying session, so that should play in the Mercedes' favor. And hopefully it's not an exciting race and Lewis takes it from the beginning.
Well, that's definitely not what we want to see. We want to see a great, exciting race where no one really runs away with it. But like Bahrain, you just knew you were in for an exciting race finish.
Agreed.
Mark, I know you're a big Ferrari fan. I don't think you support Vettel, do you? I think you might support Vettel. Uh, what are you looking for to come from Red Bull for this race?
I'm hoping for Red Bull to take some points away from Mercedes, um, be a good blocker for the Ferrari team. I think they have a
No,
really good
that's Haas. I'm sorry. Haas
no
is the blockers.
no. I think Red Bull has a really good opportunity to take some points this weekend. They've been missing points for the past two races.
Yeah.
They're not really on the table as yet with regard to points. And here is Mercedes a sitting duck this weekend, basically. Red Bull is directly on point with Mercedes' performance this weekend, and whereas Ferrari demonstrated that they're half a second faster. Now, I don't know if that translates to direct race pace, and as you mentioned, Nick, temperatures are up, but I think just generally a lack of grip for Mercedes this weekend is probably going to hinder them. And Red Bull being an aerodynamic performance team, they'll be able to push Mercedes a little bit this weekend. So I think all in all, I'm looking forward for a really good race. Our challenge, I think, from Bahrain to this weekend will be that we're not going to see three top drivers cut through the field. So that will be well probably take some of the excitement away from the race. But aside from that, Red Bull should be able to give us some good excitement once they keep it out of the wall and the engines don't
Or
blow up.
into a Ferrari.
Nick is clearly not a Ferrari fan, but he owns a lot of Ferrari clothing. Go figure. Now, further into the midfield, Robert. Huge midfield battle. We're seeing teams like Haas, McLaren. McLaren really shouldn't be there. Hint.
What's that for
Oh
Ricky?
man,
but
Ricky's gonna call in.
you know, you have McLaren, Haas, Renault, potentially Force India getting into the mix. How do you see this playing out? Like, which team? Obviously, it's going to go back and forth, but which team do you see coming out on top of all of this?
I don't specifically see one team coming out on top. I do think McLaren, with Alonso being there, we're gonna have some good battles with him. The Force Injuries, like you said earlier, 19, I believe they qualified 9th and 11, so they're slowly improving the car. And I guess word on the street was they're still working on their craft throughout the races. So I still think there's more to come from them. Haas, again, I think that was last year Ferraris. So who knows what's gonna happen? And again, I just want it to be an exciting race, really exciting race from the midfield.
And clearly, Robert is our resident conspiracy theorist on this podcast, so it didn't take him a very long time before he dropped one on there. Nick, let's talk McLaren a little bit.
Do we
McLaren,
have to?
yeah, yes, we have to talk McLaren. McLaren's a team we expect to be at the front. They no longer have the Honda engine. They now have a Renault engine, but for some reason they can't put it together in quality. They're a little bit better in the races, but they
Oh,
cannot put it
they're
together in
better in the
quality.
races because Fernando is just a
Right.
he's just an animal. He'll drive a go kart through a Formula One track if you gave him the
But
chance.
not a GP2 engine.
Not a GP2 engine, but I don't expect much from McLaren this weekend. Um, Van Dorn could only slipstream Fernando so far, but I think you guys should be looking out more for the Haas cars in the midfield, and the Sauber cars were extremely fast in my eyes, but you know, who knows? It's going to be a good and fun race, long straightaways. So we'll see who has the strength and who has weakness. So
You brought up some very interesting point there because Mark, I know Mark is obviously a big Ferrari fan again, but one of the things we saw last race was the Sauber cars just out dragging a Force India car in the straights going into turn one, and now we're seeing the Ferraris come into Q3 and with the click of a button, party mode or whatever you call it. This might be like I said another word earlier, but this might be some other mode on top of party mode. But suddenly they flip it and they're half a second ahead. Do you think the Ferrari engine just got the measure of the Mercedes finally?
Yeah, I think Ferrari's on point with the Mercedes. I'm not sure that they're outperforming Mercedes, but I think that depends on the constructor. Obviously, you're seeing up and down the field, Ferrari engines are outperforming Mercedes engines, but again, I do believe that that's dependent on the constructor. So at the front of the field, Ferrari is outrunning Mercedes, but I think this is track specific, and Mercedes is still on point with Ferrari performance. Whereas down the field, that was actually very surprising to see a Sauber outrun a Force India. However, from the get-go, Force India was not strong, and I don't think, again, I think that's a constructor issue right there. So they're different, but I do believe the Ferrari has gotten on top of their game and they're on point with Mercedes performance. And now the different tracks and the different constructors, they'll determine where the ebb and flow is.
All right. So we've been talking about the sharp end of the grid for a little bit now. I just want to take it to the other end. Robert, Williams, what do you make of it? They cannot seem to get performance out of the cars. You hear people like Lance Stroll say, you know, the team is going nowhere. We're embarrassing ourselves. They're actually slower than they were last year.
Yeah, I
What's
think that
what's going on over there?
I honestly don't. I think they're last in the field actually. I actually think the Sauber are ahead of them. I honestly don't know. I think they they need from top to bottom. I think they need to get the act together. I think they just need everything from you. There's no performance in the car. They're not making no time, no lap times. So don't know what's going on with them.
Oh, that's a nice way to say it. They're just not.
can't say it clearer than that.
Can't say it any clearer than that.
I think that Williams got their own tragedy on their hands. I read an article with this past week saying Patty Loeb flew back to the factory and is basically reshuffling. trying to figure out what's going on with Williams. So to see a team like Williams with their history, and I like the history of Formula One. So a team like Williams, I think third most winning constructor in
Yeah,
Formula
correct.
One.
Hey,
Um,
you know Ricky's gonna be calling to correct you if you're wrong.
yeah, third most winning constructor in Formula One, and they're at the tail end of the field. I can't understand that, and I don't know that Formula One should take that as an excuse or as a result.
Hmm.
no, no, Nick.
Yes.
Getting back to the Hamilton thing, this is something that Mark, and I were speaking about earlier today. Hamilton, for some reason, needs to be that driver with a chip on his shoulder.
Hmm.
Um, he needs to have an adversary. He no longer has Rosberg there,
I
and
think he's still targeting Rosberg though.
I mean, but
I think that he has a little picture of him on the steering wheel, and that's what he's chasing.
but for some reason, you look at his body language, and in the post race of Bahrain and the pre race show here, and he's saying all the right things. Don't get me wrong, he's saying the right things. The team, he's very much a team man. But do you think that he needs that adversary again? Do you think that he needs Vettel to touch him up to the side again and not defend him in a press conference?
No, I think he can play both sides of it pretty well. I mean, he's a professional. He's been around a long time. Come to think of it, I want to say he's one of the older guys on the grid. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you
No, he
got
is.
grandfather Fernando, but then after that,
Kimi,
Well, Kimmy too. But has Kimmy been there longer than Fernando?
about the
About the
same
same
time.
time,
About the
yeah,
same,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
about the
about the
same.
same thing.
So I mean, you got the older guys, and then you got the second set of older guys, which is Vettel and Lewis, and then a bunch of young guys. So I think Lewis has been around long enough that he knows how to play that game too. Um, but I honestly can't speak about it as well as our other Hamilton fan Ganesh, who's at home right now. But I'm sure we'll have him on a show called in one day. Uh, but other than that, yeah, I think he'll be fine.
I don't think so.
Are you guys sure Ganesh is at home? I haven't heard from him for quite some time since his Ferrari performance has been up. I haven't been hearing from Ganesh at all.
It's all right. I'm sure he's around. We'll take this podcast to his house one day, and do it just for him.
All right, guys. The race is about to get started. Final thoughts on the race. Let's pass it around one at a time.
For me, I'm expecting an exciting race. I want an exciting race, but I also want a boring race up front where the Ferraris bring it home. I want to see a 1-2 result because I think we were denied that last week, and
For
for
the
o-
last
o-
4 years, for
for
sure.
obvious reasons,
Actually, no,
last week
10 years.
we were denied that,
It's been a
and I
while.
think we have the opportunity to do it right now, especially since Max is starting from the third row, and he's got two clear silver arrows as targets in front of him. So I think he can make it happen for us. He can help take some points off the table from Mercedes and help us wrap this championship up real quick.
I just want to remind you that Max is known as a wild bull, and bulls chase anything that's red. You
Good
know,
point, Nick.
so that's my point. Robert, what's your
I,
take?
I I want an exciting race, but not on Mark's side of it. I'm excited in the Mercedes to really give the Ferrari guys a challenge. And on the starting grid, I'm excited. I want to see Hamilton and Bottas give these guys a real good start and try to get ahead. On the second part of it, I do want to see some battle in the midfield. I don't want to forget about the midfield. I want to make sure that we get a good battle in the midfield. Um, so again, I just want an exciting race.
What kind of a battle do you expect from a team that's half a second slower? I mean, you saw Ferrari being half a second slower in Australia,
No,
and
no,
they
he
didn't
said
have an
midfield,
answer.
Midfield,
midfield.
midfield.
No, I was talking about the front end of the field.
Don't worry, we'll see. Let the race get
Yeah,
started.
Uh,
The race is 20 minutes away. Let's see.
I'm gonna have to break this fight up. But from my end, what I'm really I love the history of the sport. There's no question in my mind that we'll see Vettel and Hamilton go down as two of the greatest drivers. Schumacher's obviously the greatest one to ever driven in the sport. But I want to see the fight. I want to see the Prost Senna fight. I want to see the Hamilton Vettel fight. because that's what we as fans love to see.
Mhm.
And that I feel like they had fights last year, but for some reason you never saw this huge battle manifesting itself.
Mhm.
But that's from my perspective. That's definitely what I'm looking to see.
Yeah.
With that, I'd like to wrap this up. This is our pre-race show. We'll be back for a post-race debrief, and hopefully it's just as interesting as this pre-race show. If you like this video, please hit like below, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you very much. Bye.
See ya.